Every year our family goes camping for a week. We have different food, unpredictable schedules, long walks to the bathroom, and more physical activity every single day from sunrise to sunset. Whether that's hiking or cycling or paddling or playing outside with the kids. And it's tiring and we don't drink enough water and there's all of these things. And in previous years, this trip would completely wreck my gut. Everything would be thrown off. The disruption to my normal routine, the change in environment, and the lack of my usual anchors at home, my digestion would just kind of like fall apart and take days to recover after we got home. This year was completely different. Everything just kind of worked. Daily bowel movements, no bloating, no planning my day around whether I'd go to the bathroom or not. I ate differently, I slept in a different bed, I moved my body way more than usual, and my gut handled it all with grace. And this wasn't because my trip was like more controlled or more planned or more structured. It was because my baseline rhythm had become strong enough to absorb the disruption. That shift from a gut that falls apart when life gets unpredictable to one that can handle real life is exactly what this video is all about. Now I have a free training and a free quiz linked at the top of the description that will help you figure out your best next steps, and I'll tell you more about those at the end. Let's get into it. If we haven't met before, hi, I'm Erin Harner, integrative registered dietitian nutritionist and gut health specialist. I specialize in helping women overcome IBS-C and chronic constipation. This video is video number 7, or the final video in my dedicated IBS-C series. And if you've watched all of the videos before this one, thank you. And everything we're covering today is the practical payoff of everything we built together so far. And if this video is the first video you're landing on, the first 6 are in the playlist and they are a must watch if you're someone who's struggling with IBS-C. Today we're going to bring the nervous system and circadian rhythm threads full circle from mechanism to real life application. So let me start with the thing I most want you to hear before anything else. When your IBS-C gets worse during travel, when you go on a trip, eating carefully, doing everything right, and your gut falls apart anyway, that is not random. When your digestion is fine all week and then Monday morning you're bloated and backed up after a weekend where you didn't even eat badly, that is not random. When a busy season at work or a stressful family period sends your symptoms into a spiral that doesn't resolve for weeks, also not random. Every flare has a mechanism. Every pattern has an explanation. And the randomness you've been experiencing, that isolating, demoralizing sense that your gut has a mind of its own and you have no control over it, it's not randomness at all. It's actually your gut responding to specific, identifiable disruptions in a way that makes complete physiological sense once you understand what's driving it. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. The explanation you haven't had and the tools to actually do something about it. So in video number 1 of this series, I introduced the concept of the gut clock. That's the internal biological rhythm that drives your digestive system. Today, I want to go a little deeper into what that clock actually means for an IBS-C gut specifically. And here's the simplest way I know to explain it. When you eat at different times every day, sleep at different times, move your body sporadically, skip meals, eat late, have no real pattern to your routine, your gut gets kind of confused. It doesn't know when to prepare digestive enzymes. It doesn't know when to activate motility and get things moving. It doesn't know when to rest. It feels a bit like traveling across multiple time zones without actually getting on a plane. Your digestion is experiencing jet lag, but it's not from being on a plane, it's from your own erratic schedule. I actually call this gut jet lag. And just like real jet lag leaves you exhausted, disoriented, and off for days sometimes, jet lag leaves your digestion bloated, sluggish, and unpredictable. And there is research behind this. This is why your weekend schedule throws everything off, while travel leads to constipation for days. Why erratic eating times create bloating that won't quit when the food is perfectly fine. Your gut doesn't need perfect food. It needs more predictable rhythm. Now here's the piece that's very specific to IBS-C, and this is really important. A non-IBS-C gut has some built-in buffer against rhythm disruptions. It can absorb a day of irregular eating or a weekend of late meals and recalibrate relatively quickly. A gut with IBS-C does not have that buffer because the nervous system is already more reactive and the gut's baseline function is already more fragile. The same disruption that a non-IBS-C person barely notices sends an IBS-C gut into a multi-day flare. The gut clock gets confused faster. It takes longer to recalibrate. And the symptoms, the constipation, the bloating, the discomfort, persist long after the disruption has passed. This is not a character flaw. It's not something you're doing wrong. It's a physiological reality of IBS-C. And once you understand it, you can actually work with it instead of being blindsided by it every single time and thinking that all of these symptoms are random. Let's talk specifically about travel because this one comes up with my IBS-C clients all the time. Travel constipation is rarely about the food. I know it's counterintuitive because the food is the most obvious thing that changes when you travel, right? But the food is rarely the primary driver. Here's what is. First, we have time zone shifts and schedule disruptions. When you cross time zones or you simply disrupt your normal routine, sleep times, wake times, eating times, your gut clock loses its reference points. These are like anchors throughout your day. The meal that used to arrive at 7 a.m. is now arriving at 10 a.m. local time. The body hasn't caught up yet. The gut that was prepared to receive breakfast at its usual signal isn't receiving any signal that it recognizes. Gut jet lag sets in, sometimes within the first day. Second, we have the loss of sensory cues. So your gut at home has specific anchors. The same kitchen, the same morning light coming through the same window, the same sequence of morning events that signal to your nervous system that the day is beginning and digestion should activate. It should turn on, it should get ready. Travel removes all of those cues at the same time. Your nervous system is also in a new environment. It's processing new inputs, and the familiar signals that your gut depends on simply aren't there. And third, and this one doesn't get talked about enough, is actually urge suppression. And this is sometimes what happens when I go camping. When the bathroom situation is inconvenient, it's a long walk across a campsite, it's an unfamiliar public restroom, it's a shared bathroom in somebody else's home, it's a teeny tiny bathroom that you have to squeeze into on a plane. This can really change some things. So many people suppress the urge to go. They wait for a better time. They tell themselves that they will go later. For an IBS-C gut, this matters more than most people realize. That natural defecation reflex, or the urge to poop, is a use it or lose it kind of mechanism. When you repeatedly suppress that urge because the timing or the environment isn't comfortable, that reflex weakens over time. Your body stops listening to the signals. Your gut stops sending the signal as clearly. And what was already a compromised system becomes even more compromised because the one reliable signal it was generating is being overridden by convenience or location or environment. So when I was camping and I had that long walk to the bathrooms, one of the things that helped was not suppressing the urge when it came. Even with the inconvenience, especially with the inconvenience, because honoring that signal is part of how that reflex stays strong. It's part of how your body creates regularity and consistency. Now let's talk about something a little different, and this is what I call the weekend phenomenon, because this is one of the ones that confuses women with IBS-C more than anything else in my practice. Monday is the worst day of the week for their gut. What's going on? She can't figure out why because she didn't eat badly over the weekend. I ate really well. I was careful. I stuck to my safe foods. Yeah, she's still bloated. She's still backed up on Monday morning. What's going on? Here's what's actually happening, and it's not about the food at all. First, we see sleeping in, and this actually shifts the cortisol awakening response. That natural rise in cortisol that happens within the first hour of waking, which directly stimulates morning gut motility. When sleep in shifts that response by 2 hours, the gut's natural morning activation is delayed by 2 hours. That first bowel movement signal comes late, or it doesn't come at all because we're doing other things and not paying attention. When we have brunch instead of breakfast, this means that the first meal of the day arrives later than the gut clock expected, later than our normal breakfasts on the weekdays. That first meal is the strongest gut clock signal of the entire day. When it's significantly delayed, the whole day's rhythm starts to shift. And then we have alcohol that's more commonly consumed on the weekends than during weekdays. And this directly affects gut motility and microbiome balance, even in moderate amounts. We also see more late night eating on the weekends. This can send signals to the gut that should be in rest mode. We also see larger meals, and they create a larger fermentation load to a sensitized gut that responds more intensely than a non-IBS-C gut would. And then we have more free reign around sugary beverages and sodas and juices and teas on the weekends. And this can compound all of the above things. And let me be very clear here, these are not moral judgments about how to spend a weekend. They're physiological explanations for why Monday may be your worst day of the week. And it doesn't mean that you need to eliminate your weekends. What it does mean, though, is that you need to understand your specific disruptions that are creating this pattern on Mondays of not feeling very well, and make some conscious choices around which ones are worth it and which ones you can easily protect against or mitigate. Something else that's really important here is the HPA axis and stress. And in video 3 of this series, why IBS-C feels worse than it should, the nervous system explanation, we covered the HPA axis in depth. So if you haven't seen that, go back and check out that video. The smoke alarm becomes hypersensitive in IBS-C. The stress response that runs in the background almost constantly takes longer to reset than it should. So I want to talk about what that means practically during stressful seasons of life, because this is where the mechanism we covered in video number 3 shows up most visibly in daily experience. When a busy period begins, whether it's back to school, a work deadline, a family health crisis, holiday prep, any season of life that ramps up demand, that smoke alarm that was already running in the background gets louder and louder. More activation, less reset. But here's the piece that most people don't expect. The gut doesn't wait for the stress to peak before it starts responding. It responds when anticipatory stress begins. This is just us thinking about the thing, which is why IBS-C flares often start before the actual difficult event, and the week leading up to the trip, and the days before a stressful work period begins, and the anticipation of a family gathering that hasn't even happened yet. The nervous system is looking ahead. It's anticipating. It's preparing for the threat. And the challenge here is that the gut, receiving those signals constantly through the vagus nerve, tightens, slows, and becomes more reactive in response. And this is why managing IBS-C during stressful seasons isn't just about managing the stress itself. It's about protecting the rhythm anchors that keep the gut clock stable when everything else in life is destabilized. The meal timing, the sleep timing, the morning routine, the breath work, the grounding, these aren't luxuries for calm seasons. They are infrastructure that keeps your IBS-C gut functional when your nervous system is under load, when it's stressed. Now let me come back to the camping trip because I think it illustrates this more clearly than anything I can just describe for you. The variables of this year's trip were not more controlled than previous years. The food was still campfire food. Everything was out of a cooler chest. The bathrooms were still a long walk away. The schedule was still completely different from home. The physical demands were actually higher. We did more hiking, more cycling, more paddling, more time outside than I usually get. What was different this year than many previous years was my baseline. In the months before that trip, I had been more consistent about my own rhythm in a way I hadn't always been. Consistent meal timing, consistent sleep, consistent nervous system regulation practices. My gut clock has been well fed with predictable signals long enough that it had real resilience built in. And when the week-long disruption came, and it always comes on a camping trip, my gut had enough baseline strength to absorb it, to adapt, to handle the new environment, the different food, the changed schedule, the long walks to the bathroom without falling apart. A resilient gut doesn't mean a gut that's never affected by disruptions. It means a gut that's strong enough at baseline that when disruption happens, and it will always happen, the flare is milder, the recovery is faster, and some weeks it just doesn't happen at all. That's the goal. It's not a perfect life with perfect control, with perfect habits and perfect schedules. It's a resilient gut inside an imperfect life to help make your life better so you have better quality of life and feel better in your body. So I talk about briefly what this looks like in practice. The anchors I use myself that I give to every IBS-C client and person with chronic constipation that I work with for travel and high stress seasons. So first, let's start with travel. So when we're traveling, we want to try and keep as much the same as possible. And it's not possible to control everything, and that's okay. We want to try and sleep and wake within an hour of your usual times, even in that new location, so you can get your circadian rhythm back on track. You want to eat your first meal within your usual eating window. And this is actually the most important anchor you have for resetting the gut clock in a new environment, especially when you jump to a different time zone. We want to get morning sunlight on the first day, ideally within the first 30 minutes of waking. This is actually the fastest way to signal to your circadian rhythm that a new rhythm is beginning. It resets the clock, and your gut clock will follow. If you take supplements, take them with you. Don't leave your probiotic or your magnesium at home because you're traveling. The microbiome and motility support your gut depends on at home still matter on the road. You want to maintain your movement, Keep your daily steps and your activities similar to your usual baseline or maybe even higher. A walk after meals matters just as much on a trip as it does at home, especially after dinner. And when the urge comes, try to honor it if you can, even when the bathroom is inconvenient. Even if the timing isn't ideal, the reflex is a signal worth protecting, not ignoring. If you're someone who struggles with weekends, we want to think about anchoring the morning. Even if you sleep in a little, try to eat your first meal within an hour of your usual breakfast window. That single anchor protects more of your gut clock than any other weekend decision you can make. When it comes to alcohol, you want to be conscious versus reactive. You want to pay attention to late meals and sugary drinks. You don't have to eliminate all of them, but you want to be conscious. You want to know that these may affect you. The difference between choosing them and drifting into them by default is the difference between a gut that recovers Monday and one that doesn't. And if you're someone who's going through a stressful season, this is not the time to let the rhythm slip. This is precisely when it matters most. The more pressure your nervous system is under, the more your IBS-C gut needs the predictability of its baseline to stay functional. We want to protect meal timing as much as we can. We want to protect sleep as much as we can. We want to keep the nervous system regulation practices, even if they feel like the first thing to go out the window. They are the things, the pillars, the anchors that keep your gut working when everything else is demanding more from you. We have to keep the baseline. So just a little recap on this series. In video 1 of the IBS-C series, I told you that IBS-C is not random. It's not a life sentence, and it's not the result of doing everything wrong. In video number 2, we went deep into the microbiome, what it is, what goes on in IBS-C, and what it actually needs to heal. In video number 3, I talked about the nervous system, visceral hypersensitivity, and the HPA axis, the bidirectional gut-brain connection, and why your symptoms are not just in your head. In video 4, we named the 5 diet mistakes that keep people with IBS-C stuck and why rhythm has to come before food. In video number 5, we talked pretty honestly about low FODMAP, what it does well, where it falls short, and how to use it as a tool rather than a destination. In video number 6, we followed Jane from lost and exhausted and about to give up to a family trip where she ate like a normal person and had daily bowel movements and finally felt free. And today in video number 7, we brought it all together. The gut clock, gut jet lag, travel, weekends, stressful seasons, and what rhythm resilience actually looks like in a real imperfect life, even when things are messy. Everything we've covered in this series points to the same truth. Function follows rhythm. Your gut doesn't need a perfect diet, a perfect schedule, or a perfect life. It needs a strong enough baseline rhythm that it can handle real life without falling apart. That baseline is buildable. That resilience is achievable, and it starts with understanding what's actually happening in your body. If you've watched the videos in this series, I want you to know that what you've just done is something that most women with IBS-C never get the chance to do. You have a complete framework for understanding what's driving your symptoms. You know the root causes. You know the mechanisms. You know what healing actually looks like. And that's not a small thing. The next step is figuring out what your specific gut in your specific situation needs. My free training called Still Bloated and Backed Up is the best starting point. It walks you through the 3 gut rhythm mistakes I see most often in women with IBS-C and chronic constipation and exactly what to do about them. The link's at the top of the description below. And my gut clarity quiz is linked right below it. It's a 2 to 3 minute assessment that helps you identify where your specific rhythm is breaking down and what your most important next step is. After you watch the training or take the quiz, if working together to build a personalized plan for your specific IBS-C feels like the next right step, you can book a gut clarity call with me directly. That's where we sit down together via Zoom, we look at your specific situation and figure out what the next right path actually looks like for you. If this series is giving you a framework for something you've been trying to understand for years, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know someone with IBS-C who's exhausted from unpredictable symptoms and no real answers, send her this series. Start her at video number 1. It might be the thing that finally changes everything for her. And if you haven't watched the full series yet, it's all in the playlist from the beginning, right here.